There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of presentations on the need for internal auditors to develop and use new tools like analytics. And that's great, whether it's machine learning or even AR, as well as artificial intelligence. It's always a good idea to explore new ways of doing things and using new tools. But what I think that it might be better for us to make sure that we're using the old tools first. And the most important one of those is our ability to think. Our ability to think about what it is we are seeing, our ability to think about what it means to us, to the organization, to controls, to risk, basically just to think. I tell people that we are given some wonderful tools if we choose and learn to use them properly. We have our eyes, our ability to see things that are happening around us, the ability to notice that at 5:30 in the afternoon, everybody is rushing to get out, or they're still working hard. Our ability to see that a warehouse is very well organized and clean, or it's a mess and people are lying, standing around, maybe even smoking. Things are laying around rather than being stacked on shelves. All of these should be telling us something. We're using our eyes to understand. Also using our eyes to pick up the non-verbal cues that people are telling us when we listen to how they talk. Because if 80% of communication is non-verbal, then we need to use our eyes to hear it. So eyes, our ability to see is important. Our ability to hear is just as important. Our ability to listen, our ability to take in and ask good listening, kind of active listening questions so that we can make sure we are hearing everything that needs to be said and needs to be understood. But then we also have the space in between, our brain, and our ability to think about what all of this means. Now, the Institute of Internal Auditors, in the core principles of internal auditing, effective internal auditing, talk about it providing assurance, advice, and insight. Now, assurance is all about telling people whether or not everything is okay or not, whether the controls are adequate, whether the management of risk is effective. Advice and insight require us to think about what it is that we are seeing and hearing, to understand the ramifications, the implications of what it is that we are seeing. And yet, so often, we prevent ourselves or our people from thinking. When I was head of internal audit, I used to hire a lot of people out of public accounting. And I found that, and I told people this, that one of the first challenges I had in terms of developing these people was getting them to think for themselves. Because in public accounting, you're basically told, follow the audit program, do what the manual says, do what was done before. And the same thing applies to many internal audit departments that I've hired people out of it, and they say, well, we had to follow the audit program. We had to do what our manager told us. In other words, people were told not to think. They were trained to be like artificial intelligence, doing what they're told, doing what they see, rather than thinking and getting out of the box and saying, what does this mean to the organization? And how do I address it? What does it mean? How do I communicate that? How do I talk to people to understand what this means, not just by myself? Now, when I started at Tosco as the head of internal audit, I had a small staff of 3 people, 2 financial auditors, uh, one of whom I talked about before, Laura, who did the treasury audit, and she was absolutely great. I had an IT auditor, Laurie, who's also an excellent person. And the third, and equally as good, was Michael. Michael Brooding was a young, compared to the others, manager. They're all managers. And he had some good experience coming out of some years of both management and external audit. One day I came out of my office and I saw him at his cube with his head on the ground. Not on the ground, on the desk. His head on the desk. Now, some people I know would have said, he's sleeping. And I certainly had, later on, I certainly had an individual who would sleep at his desk because he was up all night playing with his cards or some kind of collection he was making. But that's a different story entirely. And they're a very different person, very different result for that person. But Michael, I didn't rush to believe that he was sleeping. So I went up to him and thought, well, maybe he's sick. So I asked him, Michael, you okay? And he sort of looked up at me and said, yeah, I'm just thinking about what I've been seeing here during this audit, what I'm being told about what's going on, and I'm just thinking about what all this means. So I thought, okay, excellent. That's the kind of auditor I want. Somebody who's going to take the time to think about what they're seeing, to think about what they should be asking, to think about what should be happening and whether it's really happening. But essentially the person who is allowed and encouraged by me to think for themselves and develop those insights which are so valuable to management. When I was in public accounting, I was told off by my group manager because I was always asking, why was I being asked to do this? Or why was somebody doing that? And he was upset because I was just a very junior auditor. And why was I questioning everybody and questioning my instructions? Well, I wanted to understand. If I didn't understand properly, how was I going to do it the best way I could? How would I be able to understand what I was able to then see as I was carrying out those instructions? So we need to encourage our people not only to think, but to ask questions and even challenge us. One of the tricks I learned is that when one of your staff people come to you and ask you for help, give you a question, the trick is not to give them the answer. They have it inside them. They have it in their head. If they think it through, perhaps with your help, perhaps with a little bit of guidance, but don't answer the question for them. Help them answer it themselves. Help them think it through. Help them develop their brain. Help them develop their skills as a practitioner and later then as a manager of the organization and of people. One of the things that has really made me feel very happy about my career is that when I asked the people who have worked for me what it was like to work for me and what they would have to say, they all said that I challenged them, I stimulated them, I helped them grow. And I did that by encouraging them to think. So I encourage you to think. I encourage you not to do things one way because they've always been done that way. Not to do something because management or a book tells you to do that. Don't do something because somebody says it's best practice. It may be best practice for them. It may be best practice somewhere in another organization. But think. We have those tools, our eyes, our ears, and the space in between, our ability to think, which separates us. And we need to utilize that. We need to develop those skills. And I encourage all of you to be doing that. And I'm sure you are. If you like this video, there's many more on my channel. Please subscribe to it. Thank you.